You are now watching Shot Him 6 Times YouTube horror movie channel.
I shot him 6 times!
What's going on, horror fanatics? Welcome to I Shot Him 6 Times YouTube horror movie channel. As you know, I'm your host and creator of the channel, Marcus. If you have not done so already, please shoot this video a like. It helps out with the YouTube algorithm a ton. As well as if you're a new viewer to this channel, please shoot that subscribe button as well as that notification icon so you get all the latest content updates to the channel. In this video, I'm going to talk about Stumacher. And I'm going to talk about how not only he could be alive, how he could still be alive in the Scream franchise, but I'm also going to talk about how if he is alive, he could have potentially beat the murder charges that would have been implied on him after the events of Scream 1996. So, first and foremost, I want to say, how did Stumacher die? Well, how did he not die? How did he survive the events of Scream 1996? Well, in my opinion, it's just what everybody else who thinks that Stumacher is alive thinks. I just firmly believe he survived his injuries. I firmly believe he survived his wounds. I don't think that the TV really had much effect on him, even though it did obviously electrocute him. I don't think it did enough to kill him. And I also think that the stab wounds, they just weren't deep enough. Yeah, he did lose a good bit of blood, but in my opinion, it just wasn't enough blood to sit there and say, okay, yeah, he died from those injuries. And then on top of that, he didn't have his last scare. As Randy says, the supposedly dead killer comes back to life for one last scare. Well, Stumacher didn't have his last scare. And on top of that, he wasn't shot in the head. So in my opinion, that it's just like what everybody else, who believes Stumacher is alive. I'm on the same boat as them. I just don't believe that his injuries and the fact that he wasn't shot in the head like Billy Loomis, he wasn't shot in the head like Roman Bridger, he wasn't shot in the head like Mrs. Loomis. That just leads me to believe that, if you wanted to bring this character back, you could definitely, in terms of his injuries, downplay his injuries as if it wasn't even, nothing that serious. It wasn't life-threatening. Now, if Stumacher is alive, how would he beat his murder charges that would have been imposed on him after the events of Scream 1996? I think it is safe to say that we can all agree that if Stumacher did live and did survive the events of Scream 1996, he most likely would have been charged with murder, kidnapping, Neil Prescott, murder of Maureen Prescott, helping Billy Loomis plan all the Woodsboro murders in Scream 1996, all that would have you. He would definitely, I would like to think anyway, be charged for those crimes. Okay, so let's go with the premise that he was charged with those crimes. How did Stu beat the charges? Well, in my opinion, it's actually quite simple. He just flat out beat them. And the reason why I believe this is a theory that could work for the Stumacher character is because it's just like in real life. You have to have hard evidence to prove that somebody committed the crime. Well, you can sit there and make the argument, oh, well, he confessed, with Billy in front of Sidney, and all that. But this is the thing. Sidney didn't have a recorder. We don't know what Gail's camera caught. We know that Gail's camera caught what was in the living room. And we don't even know if it was still running, by the time the final act scene started. We don't know if the footage from the camera was still rolling. We don't know that. And another thing to keep in mind is, how Stu could have beat these charges is he could simply say, I didn't do it. You don't know you didn't see Billy Loomis nor Stumacher, kill Casey Becker and all those people. You saw Ghostface kill all those people. That's who you saw. You didn't see who was underneath the costume. If Stumacher and his defense attorney wanted to make this case in court, this is a case that could be made just like in real life. This is why I said you have to have hard evidence. And I would like to think that there wasn't really much evidence left behind at any of the crime scenes. So if Stu and his defense attorney wanted to make the case, hey, this is a he say, she say case. I didn't commit these crimes. I didn't commit these murders. You didn't see my face. You didn't see me do it. You saw someone in a Ghostface mask do it. Just like Gail Weathers basically told Sidney Prescott, you saw someone leave wearing Cotton Weary's coat. The same someone who framed who planted the coat in Cotton's car, framing him. This is kind of the same thing. Stu could easily say Billy Loomis framed him. Now, you may say, oh, what about the final act and him attacking Sydney and Gail seeing Billy and Stu together and the reveal and all that? Well, keep this in mind as well. Gail Weathers ended up getting knocked out by Billy Loomis. So all she did see was really Billy and Stu basically talking to Cindy. She didn't see Stu Macher really commit any crime. Hell, she didn't even see Stu come after Sydney in the living room before he got the TV smashed on his head. She didn't see any of that. So if Stu wanted to make the case that this is a he say, she say case, he can make that case. Another case he can make in this regard is that Billy Loomis basically held him hostage. Peer pressure. If they ask him, oh, well, what about the events at your house? You know, what about everything that went down at your house, you know, with Sydney and Tatum and all that? Peer pressure. Billy threatened my life. He threatened to kill me if I did not help him. That's easily, Stu could use that as a motive in order to try to get off of these charges, these murder and kidnapping charges that would have been imposed on him. I don't think that it's likely to happen for the character. I think it is a stretch, but I do think it is a theory and a scenario that we all have to keep in mind, because a lot of us, you know, talk about it, you know, if Stu's in jail, maybe he's doing this from jail, kind of like what Kevin Williamson did with that TV show with Kevin Bacon in it. I forget exactly what it's called. It just slipped my head or whatever, but basically that was the plan for Stu Macher to come back in Scream 3, that he was supposed to be this mastermind from jail. So we all assume that if Stu Macher is alive, that he's either in jail, he's in a psycho ward, or somehow he got broken out of jail. That's what we all assume. So why can't we all just assume as well that Stu just flat out beat the charges? I don't think it's all that impossible. Unfortunately, we see situations like this happen in real life, especially when there's no concrete evidence, when there's no fibers, when there's no, you didn't have a real look at who was underneath that Ghostface mask because they had a Ghostface mask on in a costume. So, in my opinion, if Stu Macher wanted to use this as a way to escape murder charges and kidnapping charges and whatever other charges would have been imposed on him, I definitely think that if Radio Silence wanted to go in this direction for the character in terms of giving us an explanation on how Stu escaped prison time and all that, I think this is a direction they could go in. Now you will also ask, well, wait a minute, how didn't Sydney or Gail or Dewey, how wasn't this ever brought up or mentioned? Well, if this is the case, just like with any other court case, they could sit there and sign a non-disclosure agreement to have everything out of the public eye. Just like if we believe that Stu Macher is alive, but we talk about how it was never mentioned, well, the same thing. You can sit there, especially if you have enough money, and enough power, in which we assume that, Stu's parents, given what we see with their house, they had a really nice house, lived out in the suburbs, and the fact that there was a home a lot, we assume that there's some pretty made people. Let's just put it that way. Well, if these people are made people, there'd be no doubt in my mind that they would definitely hire the best high-powered attorney possible to poke every single hole in the Scream 1996 story in terms of accusing Stu Macher as a killer, being that, once again, he wasn't seen. Him nor Billy was seen. You saw Ghostface killing people. You didn't see Billy Loomis nor Stu Macher actually killing people. You saw Ghostface. So again, if Stu Macher wanted to go in this direction, if Radio Silence wanted to go in this direction with the Stu Macher character, I definitely think that this is a direction it could go. Again, I will say this is a stretch. I don't think it will happen, but I definitely do think it is a possibility and a theory that we have to keep in the back of our heads while we're thinking about ways about how Stu Macher can be alive and how he possibly escaped prison or isn't in prison, like as an explanation as to why he isn't locked up and all that good stuff. But okay, everyone, that is it for this video. Leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts on this Stu Macher theory. Do you think that it is possible that Stu Macher beat his murder charges if he is alive and he went to court? Or do you think that this theory is a stretch and that there should be another way if Stumacher is alive, that radio silence should reintroduce him and should explain how he escaped prison time and how he is alive in the first place. Once again, this is I Shot Him 6 Times YouTube horror movie channel. I'm your host and creator of the channel, Marcus. Be sure to follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Patreon. Thank you all for watching.